purpose.
Oh, right. I see.
So the college is having a membership in G Suite. So we were asked to use Google Meet only.
That's fine. So how are things? So you're teaching online,
Yes.
right? Very good. So so who are we expecting? So about 15 students, right, today?
We have about 10 to 15 students from LCube who were selected for this academic year, mostly from
Yeah.
different backgrounds like English, botany, zoology, physics, home science, and also from different colleges across the country, across the state.
Oh, state.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, from Kochi we have, from Alappuzha we
Uh-huh.
have,
Right. All
so
right. Wow, very good.
University College we have.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we are trying to move out from the sorts of women's college and offer LCube in
That's
an
very good.
outside. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
actually, thanks to
you.
COVID. Thanks to
Yes,
COVID,
that's right. Yes, COVID has given us tremendous
an opportunity.
opportunities.
Yeah,
Yeah, and well done, Siddhara. I'm really, incredibly proud of you all the time because the way that you have really, persistently followed this and then made it happen. Well done.
actually, it's only you who introduced me to the Tesseract, right? And who motivated me to come and take down the notes and find out the best practices there.
But it's all. I think no. I mean, of course, the systems and there are people who could enable things, but at the end, one should have that determination and vision to really drive this forward. Otherwise, it's not easy. Yeah. Sarah, did I tell you about the India Center that's been really now one of the major centers in the UK now? So we work
And
very closely.
you just
Yeah,
mentioned about that once.
yeah, and I would be very very happy to have the L Cube featuring there, and that would really take it to heights because there are our stakeholders include Government of India, now Invest India, Niti Aayog, and the Office for the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government. So they are involved. The Indian High Commission is involved. The British High Commission is involved. British Council is involved. So I think they would be pleased to know that that flair that has enabled the L Cubed is now really making a big stride. That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, last year we were able to do some workshop with British Council.
But I think I think it's a little. Yeah, I think I lost you for a second because of probably the network. So shall I just try putting? I mean, just try the presentation that I have. Shall I put that?
Sure, sure.
Let me see whether it works or not.
Sure, sir.
I didn't. Okay, I mean, it's not really.
Right side, right corner of your screen. So just click
Yeah, I
that.
saw that. Yeah.
Click it.
I think, yeah. And I see a window, but the window is not really right. It's not appearing. Maybe.
You can choose either your entire screen or a specific window, whichever is comfortable
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, I think I have lots of these little, oh my gosh, the emails and so on. So I think that, let me see whether I can. So we start at 4 p.m., right?
Yeah, I'll start.
Over the last few months, I think the whole internet revolution, isn't it? So it's completely changed, transformed human life.
Mm.
Yeah. So I've got it here. So can you see the slide?
Yeah, it's visible now.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes,
So
yes.
the whole screen, or
Actually, not the whole screen, only 75%, I should say.
oh really? Okay, let me
Yeah,
see. Uh, and okay, so the whole, it's not the whole screen, right?
not the whole.
Okay. How about now?
Now it's fine.
Now it's fine. Okay. So this format is fine.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So how is Trivandrum coping with COVID?
Very badly, sir.
Really, I mean, this is so sad. I mean, I think we were really, I mean, the whole entire world, and of course, the government was very proud of how it, managed the first phase of the pandemic. But it
Mm,
just went out of
It has
control.
it has gone beyond the new normalcy.
Right, 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 right. That's I wouldn't say that. Well, I mean, I think the government did whatever they could. It has to be the people,
E-
the social
Obviously,
discipline, and yeah.
even the grassroots is not taking it in a positive manner. People are not at all bothered about the things.
Hmm,
The
hmm.
final thing is what will happen if at all COVID positive maximum. That's the attitude
Yeah.
of the population.
No, that I think that's dangerous because I mean, me coming from the field of global health can very well confidently say that well now that there is evidence of long-term implications. Uh,
Excuse me, sir. 1 second. I need to take
yeah,
a
sure,
call
sure,
from college.
sure.
Hello. Sorry, sir.
Oh, it's fine, please. I'm just well, one of the what we have is with this online system, we have something called email syndrome. So it's non-stop emails. That takes a lot of time.
I'm expecting Dr. Kiran and Dr. Rajakrishnan also to join today because they were
Oh, really?
telling,
Oh, very
yeah,
nice.
I'm not sure because it's any in between time like 4 o'clock. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but most probably they'll be joining.
No, this is all about the finding time, isn't it? So now there is no constraint. So if one can join outside office hours, then time is not an issue, isn't it? But this is a tea time, and here it is. It's well, I just finished my
Raj-
breakfast. I'm having my. I had one meeting already, and so it's just the day has started already.
Sir Rajakrishnan sir has joined.
Oh,
Good evening,
really?
sir. Yes. Good evening, sir.
I can't see him, but
I think he left. He joined.
and he left. Right.
Yeah, left. Yeah, he's there.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. Raju, sir.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you? എന്തൊക്കെയുണ്ട് വിശേഷം?
Fine, fine. Fine. വീട്ടിൽ തന്നെ കുത്തിയിരിക്കുകയാണ്. വീട്ടിൽ തന്നെ.
ആണോ? അതെ.
How are things there?
Things are all fine. I think we are now peaking the second wave. I mean, it's even. I think it has become a little bit challenging because the second wave strain seems to be more contagious and the death rate seems to be very high. So it's going to take some time before.
You are fine there with all these things. You are fine there.
Yeah. All fine. Yes. Yeah. So it's just. It's not easy, especially opening the campus and so on was a big challenge. But at Southampton, we didn't have much of a problem because I think although we have students from over 135 countries, so we have many students from India now this time. So they're all here, taking kind of a blended learning. So they come to campus only for certain interactions. Otherwise, they will miss the educational experience.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. No, but the battle is everywhere.
Sir, can we start now?
Yeah, sure.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome you all to the Expert Talk Series, an initiative of Lab for Learning and Life Skills of Government College for Women, Thiruvananthapuram. This is the second Expert Talk of the series. And today I'm extremely privileged to welcome and introduce the expert of the day, my own mentor, Professor Sabu Padmadas. He is the Associate Dean International and Professor of Demography and Global Health and founding co-director of the Center for Global Health, Population, Poverty and Policy at the University of Southampton, UK. Dr. Sabu obtained a PhD degree in demography from the Faculty of Spatial Sciences of the University of Groningen in the Netherlands and MSc degree in demography in 1995 and a BSc in mathematics with statistics and physics from the University of Kerala. Dr. Padmadas joined University of Southampton as a lecturer in demography after completing a 2-year term as postdoctoral fellow of the Dutch Royal Academy of Science at the University of Groningen. He is also involved in the China Population and Development Research Center attached to the National Health Commission of the People's Republic of China. His areas of interest include population dynamics and the application of demographic analysis and statistical modeling of global health and well-being outcomes in low, middle income and transition economies. So I'm indeed honored to have you, Dr. Padmadas, here. Sir is awarded with lots of national and international awards for his excellence in teaching and his engagement as an outstanding lecturer. And he's also been awarded for his contributions to education and curriculum development. Over to you, sir. We are indeed grateful to have you here today. And my colleague, Dr. Jyoti S. Nair, has also joined here today to listen to you. We were the FLAIR interns representing the University of Kerala during 2013-14 to University of Southampton. And at that time, Dr. Sabu was our mentor, academic mentor. And both of us were indeed privileged and really honored to work under Dr. Sabu for 1 month, and we still cherish those days and moments very much, sir. And thank you so much for being us today, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sithara, for that generous introduction, and namaskaram to everyone. And well, I think I'm really honored and also very, very happy to be in front of you. And especially, I know that with the hard work that Dr. Sithara Balan has really put in to really to develop the lab for so the L cubed in Women's College. I think this is definitely a great initiative that was facilitated by the Department of Higher Education. At that time, it was the FLAIR program. It was led by Dr. Raju Krishnan, who is also here today, and Dr. J. Kiran, and also, the other good friend, Dr. Jyoti Nair. I think, we have really had a wonderful time discussing about academic matters and research and so on. So it was actually a mutual learning process in terms of really trying to understand, because I come from, I'm a local person. I mean, in fact, each and every road in Trivandrum is familiar to me, as well as Kerala. So for me, I think it has been a journey, but also to share and reflect on our own institutions and the potential for developing, research capacities and capabilities. I think these are really beyond words. So my congratulations to Dr. Sithara Balan and also her team actually to sustain this activity, the lab for learning and life skills, which is really the first of its kind, I would say, in the state of Kerala. So today's topic, I think, before I get into this, I mean, I just wanted to really, let me put this, I've prepared a few slides. I recently attended an All India Association's conference organized by Mahatma Gandhi University. And I presented some slides. So, with your permission, I'm using those slides so that, let me see quickly. It's always a challenge. Let me see. Can you all see the slides? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Right. Excellent. So I hope you're not seeing my other windows, like the university emails and stuff. Right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Because once I was in a meeting recently, and I was sharing all my personal emails. There's nothing, no secret there, but this is. So first of all, I think let me say that the students who are in front of me, one of the things I've cherished over the last 2 decades almost, is to be in front of you, to talk to you and to listen to you, because you are definitely not just the next generation, but the next generation of students who can make positive changes to the way that the whole society and so on. So when we talk about research, I think the first and foremost aspect of research is not just academic research. So even police used to do research, even doctors used to do research, lawyers constantly they do research, engineers. So it's all pervading. So it's almost everywhere, and to have a research mind is very, very important. That's how you build your kind of skills, problem solving skills and critical thinking skills and so on. So research is also very much in schools. School children, they have opportunities to do research. They have opportunities to engage in research and so on. So it's really kind of one of the most important area. But I think what we are really concerned about is that the type of research that we need to make a positive difference to the society. So research is not really just a research that is really getting papers published or completing a dissertation or a thesis for your degree, but it has got its impact, and it should have its impact beyond these levels. So all research involving human subjects particularly follow what is known as a set of codes of conduct and principles. So these are what is known as the research ethics. And these principles are, range from respect for individuals, like, because most of us probably do research on human beings, human subjects. And some people do research on animals. Some people do research on on machines and so on. Whatever it is, that the respect for humanity is very, very fundamental. And the kindness, that means like, you have to really make sure that, well, I mean, whatever research that you're carrying out on individuals who hold certain privacy and freedom and so on. So we need to respect that and be kind. And there should not be any harm on your research. That's very important. And also the other aspect is this justice, because I think at the end, we all these research should lead to something that the society benefits, and that's important. So research ethics complaints is all about improving the well-being or the health or the economy or the whatever of the individuals or society and nations. And research ethics can be broadly classified as a set of codes of practices, protocols, norms, and values that govern the way we do research. So because there are different ways that we can do research. So I can do a research very quickly, just like collecting some data and finding the information that I want. But that's not just the research, but the research that we are thinking of should really be following a set of codes of practices and norms and so on. And that is very, very important. And research ethics is not just something that people do or people follow, these codes of practices that people follow only at the time of research or after research, but it applies right from the design and the conception of your research to implementation. So for instance, when you're doing a field work, all these research ethics aspects should be reflected in that. It also extends from implementation of the field work to analysis and also publication or dissemination at later stages. So that's very important. So what are the key questions for today? So what I'm going to do today is I want to really give you some flavor of the broader perspectives of research ethics and science and scientific world. And also, I want to give you some case studies so that you can practice, so that let's make the session more interactive where possible. I know that, well, online is a big challenge for all of us because, I am sitting in front of a machine far away. I don't really see you, and this is not me. So I always like to see people. I always like to interact with people. That's me. And so, therefore, as a person, I have really struggled a lot in terms of talking to the machines. But regardless of that, I think these are the three questions that we are going to address today. One is why ethics is fundamental in scientific research, and what are its broader dimensions. So its dimensions, as I mentioned, it encompasses wide spectrum of activities and rules and regulations that we need to follow. How best we can address ethics to minimize any form of intentional or unintentional harm, because we don't want to harm anyone, right? So if your research is harming anyone, we don't call that a research. It is actually an activity, an illegal activity or a criminal activity that is that's working against the humanity and civilization. So that we don't want. And what are the implications of breaching ethics in research studies? Because the implications can be catastrophic sometimes, and I will share some of the examples today. In terms of why it is catastrophic. So let me start with actually giving you that catastrophic implication first. This is actually the Hungary's president. He, in 2012, he was forced to resign because the president of a country committed what is known as an academic integrity issue. That means plagiarism. So his PhD document, there was evidence, prima facie evidence of multiple, multiple instances of plagiarism. So it was really, so there was from moderate to quite major kind of plagiarism, and that was really that is totally unethical, because he probably knowingly, consciously or unconsciously, he must have really copied in something, or he must have transcribed something from a text or a literature, and he just copied in, and then he got into trouble. So it is actually a country's president resigning because of this allegation. Really, that shows the implication, because that is, as the head of the country, he should be really a model to its citizens, to its children, to its students, to really respect and follow certain ethical practice and so on. So that's just a a kind of an extreme case, but there have been other extreme cases which has affected the way that we live, and the way that some of the inventions have influenced our life, starting from social media to to vaccines and so on. I think so. There is a wide range of information in front of us. So so ethics is embedded throughout research. So that's from from the design to the conception, and that is really paramount. And let me start with giving you some ideas of research. Why research is important. I think if you ask me a very honest question, whether you are really going to a bank, whether you are going to really to do your work as a teacher, whether you are going to write your civil services examination, or whether you want to be a police officer, whatever you are, whether you want to be a professor, whatever, you need to have a questioning mind. That means you need to have an inquisitive mind. Always you should be asking questions. And as postgraduate students, you have this wonderful opportunity to interact with not just me, but also many other people. And this is a unique opportunity for you to explore the different dimensions of research. So a research starts with questions, right? So a research otherwise is actually an investigative process, or in other words, it's an investigation. Just like why I got interested in research was that from a very early age, from a very young age itself, even when I was in school, I mean, I had that tendency of not just reading literature, but also to have that reflection and asking that question. Why is like that? Why did I find that? Why certain behaviors? Or why do some people succeed in making inventions? So these are really questions that have really remained with me and influenced me over the period of time. And even till today, I'm learning. So I might be learning today something from you. So that is an iterative and ongoing, a kind of an ongoing and investigative processes to find and validate observations and different facts. So that's very important. So as I mentioned before, well, intelligence officials, so if you are working for the National Intelligence Agency or Enforcement Directorate, that's been really featuring all of the news, they have to do tons of research. They have to go through documents. They have to really, and at the same time, even they have to really follow certain ethical principles and ethical values and codes of conduct. Journalists, every day, we have seen that, well, journalists, some of you may choose a career to become a journalist in the future. That's a great profession, but there is a question, are we seeing some kind of ethics in today's journalism? The way that media reports news. Media always like breaking news without really knowing the implications of or the extent of impact that it can have on human beings. So that includes also, for instance, celebrities who are really being victimized, and top officials of the government being victimized, sometimes for real facts, sometimes for made up facts and so on. So I think that aspect of ethics is all pervading. And the only difference in scientific research, that's what you and I do, is that we follow what is known as a systematic or a structured, a methodological approach to finding facts and reducing any form of biases. So that means, like, we follow a construct, or we follow a structured approach to really conducting research, giving attention to experimentation and innovation, because you always want to really test something, right? So you want to really find out that, well, why is traffic sort of peaking in front of the Thiruvananthapuram Secretariat at 9 a.m. in the morning? So that's just because you have that question. You're really wondering why that's happening, and you may want to really do some experimentation. And also, innovation is also very an inherent part of the whole exercise. Innovation, there is also a misunderstanding about innovation. Innovation is not just about technology, because people always equate innovation with technology or something. It is about something that thinking out of the box, thinking in a different manner, that aimed at, thinking in a different manner, aimed at really enhancing the outcome, or or improving the efficiency of that outcome. I think that's what is innovation. So for which you would need, a well-trained, you need to become a well-trained researcher. So a well-trained researcher can do wonders. They can change the world for better. They can make our lives smoother, not just your own life, because you have a good profession, but also you can influence and make positive difference to others' lives. I think when you make that is what is known as the the impact of research. So it all begins with an observation leading to a question or a hypothesis, and so it follows a kind of a logical format. So because you look at observations, that maybe these observations could come from what you read, and when you read literature, ethics is very important. So you have to really make sure that, your ethics, a clear ethical point there is that you have to acknowledge what person X has done. Let's say that, Parvati has done, fantastic research on something and she has a finding. And let's acknowledge that. I mean, that's why it's important. Let's acknowledge, let's positively reflect on that, and then see that, in addition to what Parvati has done, what additional things can I do to really improve that work, that body of work? And that is known as research. And that will lead you to a question, because a question is very, very important. So I expect today, many of you would also ask me a lot of questions, because I think one of the things that keep me really alive is when I have questions from students. So you're more than welcome to stop me anytime, ask any questions, and so on. And research ethics, I think, even as I speak, I'm really completing a form for one of our work with the Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry, Dr. Kiran Bedi, and we are doing some work together. And I'm really completing a research ethics application. And I have one thing that I've observed is that research ethics are not really a formality of ticking the boxes. So that's important. So sometimes people have a tendency that, look, let me tick the boxes and so on. And I have seen some researchers ticking the box of different forms with no reflection whatsoever. So that's not the objective of completing a research ethics application or research ethics form. Now, when I talk about this form may not exist in many parts of India, or even in Kerala or in Trivandrum, but believe me, this is going to come very soon, because this was the case probably in Europe and even in North America and many other Western or advanced economies, where the higher education systems are really well structured and so on. But now, even an undergraduate student, a BSc student or a BTech student or a medical student will have to really go through this form and make sure that they know what they are doing, and they reflect enough of their research objectives and so on. So to put it simply, it's all about having discipline, integrity, and also, very simply, common sense before you start a research. So, a research also has a common sense element that sometimes you have to, that's why some people come up with ideas. Some people have this questioning mind. They come up with some idea. They have a very commonsensical thinking, and that leads to some very interesting, remarkable research outcome. So no matter whether it is social sciences, home sciences, psychology, chemistry, physics, engineering, medicine, any laboratory or social media research, whether it is quantitative or qualitative, it doesn't matter whether you do artificial intelligence research or big data or small data research, whatever it is, research ethics, that reflection on research ethics is fundamental. And also, we must have what I say is a sense of responsibility and duty of care before doing any type of research, because even sometimes some of you maybe are probably thinking of writing a postgraduate or MA or MSc dissertation. And now what I will say is that, sometimes you may think that, this is actually for that degree. It may be for that degree, but it's also about training, the training to be more responsible, and training to have that sense of obligation to the society. So sometimes some of your research could be written, could be published, if it is really proving to be something useful and informative to the society. So that research ethics practice is something that is, that cuts across a wider spectrum of activities of research, from, reading literature, summarizing the literature, analyzing data, interpreting the data, generalizing findings. Sometimes you have to be very, very careful, right? So you may have really done, you have taken a small sample, let's say from Karakutam, and you're saying that in Trivandrum this is like this. I mean, or the outcome is, you're probably reflecting the whole outcome on Trivandrum or Kerala, and that's wrong. So what I'm saying is that, well, that reflective thinking is very, very important. And people also have a tendency to massage data and force interpretations on data, and that's absolutely wrong and unethical. And if something goes wrong, like you've seen with the Hungarian president's case, it can be catastrophic, it can harm people and society, it can damage individual and institutional reputations and any returns of investment. So institutional reputation means, like, for instance, let's say that, well, a student from Alapura College has, or Ernakulam Maharaja's College has done a fascinating work, but this is not really properly, kind of designed in terms of ethical implications and so on. And it can actually damage not just that individual, but also that college and that institution. And that can, so that is very, very important. That sometimes we really miss, to find in real world. And equally important is also the need to have a thorough scrutiny of the research ethics application, which I will come back to that in a minute, because sometimes people tend to really write these research applications. Even if there is no application, it's always good to reflect on certain basic aspects of research ethics. So I think this is, I've created a word cloud for you. So just to really let you know that there are these wider dimensions. Research ethics is not just confined to one aspect. It has got these multiple dimensions. No matter what kind of research you do, whether you're doing a funded research, that means a research funded by the government or or an international agency, or a research that is, that you have really initiated on your own. All these aspects reflect. And some of these, I think it is very difficult to go through all of those, but these are, to be honest, as I mentioned, these are all also common sense. So you would see that, well, the vast majority of these terminologies are that one can reflect and one can understand, from respect, animal protection, to dignity, to communications, creativity, social responsibility, and so on. So I think I'm going to pick up a few. So for example, one is the objectivity. So what is objectivity means? Like, objectivity is actually just like, being objective, right? Avoid any form of vagueness. So be precise as much as possible. So if you have a research project, if you have initiated a research, qualitative or quantitative, be clear in what you're trying to do. So you may have read some literature, and through that literature you have questioned. A research project must have a research question. So if you don't have a research question, then I think don't force to really come up with the research question, but you must have what is known as a research question to start with. So avoid, any form of bias, whether you're collecting data, sometimes seeking expert opinion. So, I would say that, well, before you start a research project, talk to your teacher, talk to your supervisor, talk to your friends, talk to your boyfriend, talk to the parents. Then that way you will refine that particular research problem, because you're dealing with a research problem that needs to be refined with a question, with a hypothesis, and so on. And then the objectivity also applies to analysis. So when we do the analysis, we have a very, so for instance, a particular data can take you to different directions, right? So you have one set of data, and you're interested in finding the relationship between X and Y, or you want to really find out the impact of X on Y. So you can just, you can also probably, there are other factors that you could explore. So don't scatter around, but be precise. And that also applies to interpretation. When you are asked to interpret the data, stick to that, what you're trying to do. And that's also part of that research principle or the ethical principle. Then peer review, personal decisions, and all these actually, objectivity is very important. The other thing that I want to really highlight is the IP, which is so here IP stands for intellectual property. Well, it's more like a copyright thing. It's actually respect for intellectual property, and there are institutions who have really paid millions and millions of rupees and dollars or pounds, whatever, because of certain negligence towards IP rights and IP rules and so on. You have to, I think what you have to do is that you have to respect and acknowledge invention. So if, let's say that, well, some of you are really doing zoological research or chemistry research. Sometimes, there may be patents that are already existing in different parts of the world. You have to really have an understanding. So that is one reason that why literature review comes before any kind of research or even during and after research, is because people, what I am thinking, probably 10 other people are thinking about it. So, or some people have already done it. So A, you're not repeating what others have done. B, even if you repeat, you make sure that you acknowledge that patency, you acknowledge that copyright and other forms of intellectual property. And one important thing here is that now Google is our oxygen, right? So we rely on Google for a lot of things, and we have seen over time, not just there, everywhere, universally, there is a tendency for people to really pick, because everyone likes shortcuts these days. Because people want to really find shortcuts and so on. So they just extract some text from the Google and then they just claim it as if it is theirs. So it doesn't matter whether you're extracting that information from a blog or vlog or a scientific article. If you are really extracting it without really following the principles of bibliography, so the principles of academic integrity, then it is actually a matter of, it can be legal. So the challenge could be legal. Anyone, it doesn't matter, even if you're really, so for instance, let's say that, well, if there is a dissertation done which is sitting in the University College, Trivandrum, and if a journalist, let's say, or if someone really spots that, look, oh, this is actually this particular work is extracted from another work, technically that person so you can sue that person, and the Court of Justice will only look at one thing, whether there is an evidence of plagiarism. If there is an evidence of plagiarism, there could be an impact in terms of punishment, whatever. So I think we don't want to do that. So we have to really make sure that, well, the extracting the sentences. So that's why we keep saying that one of the reasons why, one of the reasons for higher education, like, what you are doing, is to really, for you to get trained to read something, reflect, and then also paraphrase and come up with your own, reflections and so on. And also, do not use any unpublished data or, statistical methodology or different types of methodology or results without permission. So sometimes there may be some data, some technique or some idea that is already existing. And if it is already existing, if it is not published, don't think that, well, don't take it for granted. So one can always trace back and so on. So you can actually request permission before you use such information. Give credit wherever that credit is due. So that is very important. The other important aspect is, which I want to pick up is, let's say, dissemination, for example. Dissemination is also something really very important, because, what you communicate to different stakeholders is very important. So in other words, you need to have what is known as responsible publication. It also comes with certain social responsibility. And you're not publishing just for fame, right? Because, you want to know that, well, look, Parvati is excited because Parvati got a big publication in one of the top journals in the world, let's say Nature or Lancet or whatever, the big journals in the world, or Cell, whatever. And that fame is fine, but you're not just publishing for fame, but also you're publishing that to advance your research and scholarship. And therefore, you need to really make sure that, well, you also have what is known as a social responsibility to dissemination. And so that requires you to be original, and you also need to make sure that there is scientific rigor and significance, and you're also avoiding any form of duplication. And that's very important. The other aspect is regarding legality. Legality is also very, very important. Legal challenge, I think, which is here. This one, legality and human protection is paramount when we talk about research. So one aspect of legality is that, well, the knowledge of relevant laws, for instance, or institutional and government policies. So, for example, I could say that, well, tomorrow I'm going to evaluate one of the tracing, tracking, whatever policy of the health minister. In terms of COVID. Now, I need to, before I can actually evaluate the outcome of that particular action, I need to know about what are the rules, what are the laws, and so on, and that institutional policies and government policies. It's not just the government policies, but also probably Women's College may have a policy in place, so that you need to really be, you don't want to really spend too much time in terms of understanding the legal implications, and it may vary from one topic to another topic. But if your topic of investigation has any legal dimension, you would really probably care for that one. And the other thing is regarding the animal protection is also very, very important, I think, which is probably not really captured here, but I would say that, well, because it's here. But one of the things with animal protection is some of you are probably doing experimental research. Many people nowadays, the people who are really developing vaccines for COVID, for example, they have skipped that part because of the emergency. But ideally, I think, it used to be like whatever vaccines we have produced, we have had animal testing as part of it. And now animals, there are also some ethical issues with it. So I have a very good friend in China, Professor Wu Jiwei from Nanjing University in China, with whom I worked very closely. And he's a virologist by training. And I've seen his lab, and well, he follows certain ethical procedures in terms of keeping those the animals in his lab. But he said that, well, that's not the case elsewhere, because elsewhere sometimes animals are actually mistreated or exploited and so on. Well, certain exploitation seems to be impossible. And that also applies with plants. Plants also have life, isn't it? So you have to, so sometimes you may be testing something on plants, testing a new pesticide on plants, but with the reflection that, well, look, that may damage not just the plants, but also the yield that comes out of it, the fruit that comes out of it. So you have to really have that caring nature, the respect and caring nature for animals and whatever plants when you use them in research. And do not conduct any unnecessary or poorly designed animal experiments. And that can be, probably we have the human society has really advanced ahead of, we have really advanced very well, but that humans, what I meant is that, well, there have been some changes that we have seen over time. But what is important here is to make sure that, well, that even today, when you do when you involve certain human subjects or animals, you need to be careful. In the UK now, there is a strong opposition of using animals in laboratories and so on. So there was actually a protest in Oxford University a few years ago because of excessive use of animals for biomedical research and so on, or vaccine research. So that needs to be avoided. The other reason for human subjects protection is to minimize any harm or risk, right? So because, for example, just to give you an example, COVID vaccine, one of the things that $1 million question in front of us is whether we will have a vaccine for COVID. And well, of course, we may have it, and very soon. Although I'm a little bit speculative of that development because of the challenges that we have. But anyway, so this vaccine, before it can be, implemented at a population or a community level, we need to make sure that it's safe, right? An important aspect of vaccination is to make sure that the vaccine that we are going to implement is safe for human beings, and there is no risk in terms of life or other complications. And so that will take time, because you can't just simply invent something and you say that, well, look, I've decoded the RNA structure of the coronavirus, and now I know the vaccine. Here we go. I mean, that doesn't really work. So there are certain sets of protocols that you need to really follow and ensure that, well, it is safe before we can actually implement on human beings. So we need to respect the human dignity, the privacy, and also autonomy, and that is very, very important. I think I can actually go around for a long time, but we should also try to avoid certain sensitivity of sometimes we deal with certain sensitive topics. I mean, obviously the one that is currently dominant in the world is COVID. COVID is also sensitive information, and that I will come back to that in a minute. But there are other sensitive issues. Sometimes it may it can actually bring a government down, actually. So that's possible. So sometimes what you do could have implications. So let's say that, well, you're analyzing some data, and you are really analyzing something that could really harm an institution or a government or an establishment, and that damage could be sometimes significant. There is also what I would say is the confidentiality and data storage. I think that's again very, very important, because once you collect all these data, so what do you do with this data? So do you give it to a company? Like, let's say, for instance, nowadays for marketing research, some of you are really doing your MBA or other type of postgraduate studies in business analysis and so on. There is a big world out there constantly looking for data. And although, well, we have Facebook, Instagram, and all those kind of social media generating lots of data, so these data could be used. So a lot of people, I think in the future, you will see more and more people using social media data for research. And that's already happening now, even for COVID research. So one of my colleagues, he does this he works with Facebook and also with Microsoft to really, on various types of social media data and so on. So once you extract this personal information, what do you do with it? Well, you have to ensure anonymity. You have to ensure confidentiality of such data. So, it's just quite broad. I think that's what I'm saying, that, well, this is not an easy ride. I mean, in terms of when you deal with it. Although many people think that, research ethics, I mean, well, it's all just, formality. It's all ticking boxes. My answer to that is that it is no. I mean, it is not about ticking boxes. So this is just a few examples from the form that I'm currently filling in. We have ERGO stands for Ethics and Research Governance Office. So I was the chair of this ERGO when it started at the university. So now you'd be surprised. There is a full-fledged automated system that would really screen and filter what information that you're trying to obtain from society, from different types of research. So these are some of the questions that I would like to really share with you for your reflection. So if you're collecting primary data, first question is that how will you identify and approach the participants to recruit them to your study? So how will you identify a participant? And of course, well, in statistical sense, if you want to really follow a sampling approach, then there is a sampling protocol, and based on census data, based on neighborhoods and so on, then you would really go and find that information. But again, you have to first have an informed consent. So you need to make sure that, well, this person is whoever you're collecting the data from, that person is fully aware of of what you're trying to do. So whether you're a census officer, whether you're someone who is collecting samples of malaria protozoa from the gardens, whatever, you need to really make it very clear the objectives of your research to participants. And then there is another question that we ask, is that, will you be collecting special category data as defined by the UK data protection legislation? So that's where I'm really reflecting on this point. We have several of my colleagues who are working in the field of sociology, social policy, and criminology. They collect data from prisons. So they sometimes interview prison inmates. So in other words, people who have committed crime, people who are victims of crime. So we collect these data. And remember one thing, And there, it's very important that you preserve the anonymity of that information, because otherwise what will happen is that it could even, the information that you collect and publish with, unanonymized could actually even create lots of legal challenges. So you need to avoid that. So if there is let's say that if somebody in my university collect these data without reflecting these legislative importance, and then later on Supreme Court or the any other court of justice find that, well, this is not done properly, they could literally sue the university. They could literally put a complaint against the university. They could even get money back, or it could be financial, it could be but the institutional reputation, the reputational damage could also be sometimes severe. So the other question that we have is, will participants be taking part in your study without their knowledge and consent as time? Example, cohort observation of people. So sometimes you may have, there are classic studies, classic examples of those studies in the world about people doing. So for instance, the gay and the homosexual community. I think how we got to know about this is actually following a cohort of people who have certain behaviors and so on. So, but here the objective of the researcher is actually to understand whether there is evidence of homosexuality in the society. But the way that the person is conducting research is really very covert, and that's not really. And sometimes it's inevitable. So if there are inevitable circumstances, you need to explain that very clearly. Why is it necessary to really do that cohort observation, and what are the implications? And have you followed all the ethical obligations? Like, for instance, you're not really going to say that, well, this person who is let's say Raman or Sashi has really gone and he's actually following that club, whatever. You don't want to name those people, right? It's not just naming those people. You don't want to even say that, well, the community where they come from. So there are lots of issues attached to it. And sometimes some research also includes the participants who are under the responsibility or care of others, such as parents, carers, teachers, or medical staff. Sometimes, now with a rapid aging population in Kerala, we have lots of older people who are seeking, their final, stage of life in institutions. So sometimes you may conduct research. So research on elderly in different parts of the of the state. So that could be households, that could be healthcare institutions, or it could be social care institutions. So you need to have proper permission. You need to have all the required things. I'm not saying that, well, we don't follow this. I'm sure that we are following. Most of us follow this, but sometimes we have a tendency to really ignore or be negligent of these important issues. The final thing is about detailing any possible distress or discomfort or inconvenience or harm or other adverse effects that the participants may experience during the process of data collection, or post data collection, and so on. So, and the question is that, well, sometimes that could really happen, right? So, for example, in demographic surveys, we ask questions about children's, about their children who died in the last 1 year to mothers and so on. So nobody wants to really talk about their personal matters, right? But on the other hand, we need to really know the society. We want to know more about this, because I think we need to really think about appropriate policies and so on. So there could be some mothers, for example, who have experienced certain complications after pregnancy, or postpartum depression. Sometimes you may really, so all these people, so they're already in depression, so you don't want to really bring another list of questions to them. So you have to also reflect at that time to make sure that, well, the respondent or your participant is not really badly affected by these issues. The final thing is regarding, not the final, sorry, these are just only a sample of questions. How will you maintain participant anonymity and confidentiality in the data collection, in the analysis, and also publications? I think that's something that's very important. So you may have collected, let's say, from household number 5, these three people and so on. But those three people will always be there. That data, you as a researcher, you as a field investigator know exactly where you have got that data from. Now, how will you ensure that you keep that data confidential? That is very important. That brings to this issue of data storage. So that means, like, do you have a system, a password encrypted system that could really protect these data, so that anyone else, let's say that somebody else can actually misuse this data, so you avoid that data. I hope I gave you some kind of a brief kind of reflection of some of the broader challenges. I have some case studies, but before I move to case studies, I just would like to really give you an opportunity to ask questions, and if you have any burning questions in you, so please feel free. I'll just stop here for a few minutes.
Okay, so actually we received a lot of questions in the chat box,
okay,
but
right. Sorry, I couldn't see that on my window, but
actually, since this is a very small group of participants, it would be really interesting if each one can switch on their video and initiate the discussion directly to Sabu sir.
Why not? Why not? Please do. And I'm going to give you some assignments now.
So who is going to ask first?
Let's say Diti Srikumar. Do you want to just ask a question?
Abhirami?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please switch on.
Am I audible?
Yeah,
yes, you're audible, Abhirami.
Would be great if you can switch on your,
Yeah, that's
great. Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Abhirami. Good evening.
Yeah, sir, my question is, sir, while as a beginner, when I was just going through some of the things about research in internet, I found one term called predatory journalism and journalism. I wanted to know what it actually is and how we can differentiate it from the real authorized journals. How can we differentiate it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Abhirami. Thank you for your question. I think, these are all what is known as very purposive and intended, an intentional research. Sometimes, you may go and extract some information, personal information of people or even institutions and so on. I think those who do not follow those ethical principles, whether it is from a journalist point of view or whether it is a research point of view, will face consequences. There is no doubt about that. Because, those kind of things have really started to evolve even in our own state in Kerala, right? In Kerala, now anyone, so technically, I think one could challenge the invasion of privacy of people without proper consent and without proper rules and regulations. So that's why in research or even in any kind of that investigative processes, you would really ask people to complete what is known as a consent form, saying that, look, and that consent form, you also make sure that you don't really intend to name them and so on. Sometimes naming is important. You have to name people, right? So sometimes you can't really avoid naming, or sometimes it is very implicit, like in the sense that, if I'm saying that, Facebook has created this, Facebook is influencing the US election, let's say, which is really happening now. Facebook is electing Trump. If I'm saying this, the person who is really going to put on trial is Mark Zuckerberg, right? So that's obvious. So there are certain institutions I think we can't really help, but that predatory journalism is really ruining the world. And in fact, I think it has really created more harm to society and individuals and institutions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You have to, I think, even if you're a journalist, you will have to comply with that essential protocols. Yeah. So it's very cold here, but also very sunny. Right. Thank you for your question. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhirami. Riyamul?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, dear.
Yeah. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Riyamul.
Yes, very much.
Hi.
Sir, my question, I had formulated my question. I'll just read it out. There are two questions.
Thank you.
Okay. So imagine that a particular research it is required for the well-being of the humanity, but it has the potential to bring down a government or an institute. So in that case, should we proceed with the research, or I mean, like, should we choose the humanity or the institutional welfare? That's my first question.
Right. That's yeah. Well, that's a challenging question, Riyamon. I think you must definitely pursue a research career. That's an excellent question. I should say yes. So the question is between humanity and institution. Well, here, I think that also depends upon who we are. Let's say that, well, if you are a researcher working for a research institution or an agency, there, I think your approach should be always really looking at the scientific research part, right? Because you're not interested in other things. You're interested in pursuing your goal, which may have implications. But then, if you're following all the regulations, protocols, then you're protecting yourself and the institution from any harm. That's one thing. Second is that sometimes you're part of the government, or you're part of something, let's say a media, where you want to expose certain things and so on, and which has implications to a wider society. But, well, that could probably damage the government, for instance. I think in those circumstances, usually, I think those are usually the case, when you deal with, let's say, for instance, mostly it's media type research, but not really academic research. So if it is academic research, then you're really following that the essential codes of conduct and protocols. So that should really protect you. But to answer that specific question, I think the humanity comes first than the institution. There's no doubt about that. But you have to really find a way to present it so that So I'm saying it from an academic perspective. From an academic perspective, your role is to really highlight the problem, or your role is to find out that fact and validate that fact. Once you have done the validation, then you leave it there. Then it's up to the government to respond, or whoever is responsible, they can actually respond in such a way. But to answer, I think that's not an easy question to answer as well.
I know, sir. I know, sir.
Yeah. No, but there are ways. In academic life, I think we have come across. So, for example, I have worked with the government of China for almost 13, 14 years. I worked with them, with the UN, with the United Nations, and the two ministries in China. I have come across some certain difficult moments in my life. I think I would probably need I need to probably get out of my academic life and probably start writing all this, because that was really very personal, and I experienced quite a lot of challenges. And there were points where some of our research were questioning the way in which the government was functioning and so on. So in those circumstances, what we did was you could also think of a consultative process. That means that's why we call it stakeholder engagement. So in your research, you could engage your potential stakeholders. So rather than harming that government, you can actually engage the government in that process, saying that, look, I am a researcher, I'm doing this. What you are doing is harming the society. So well, these are some of the things, and I'm really, I'm taking an academic stand, and I'm giving you information. So the government may not know this, that they may not reflect that, well, this is harming. But if they reflect, and if they can change that practice, then it's well and good.
Yes, but we need power for that, right, sir? No,
you are the power. Believe me, don't underestimate Riyamon. You are the power.
No. What I meant was, there are certain researchers, they come from very, normal families. They have issues, security issues. Many a time, the question comes to our mind, will I be safe if I do such kind of research? But it's my passion. I know the facts, and I want to do it. But that's something, it bugs me, sir. When I think of research, we hear facts, we see things. So it has always been above my mind. That's why.
Absolutely. But you have to really, as a researcher, you follow your ethical process, right? If you follow your ethical protocols, then nothing is going to harm you, because that ethical protocol is also what I'm talking about, is the engagement. So, no government ministers. I'm sure there were some ministers probably, they may not really, they may have their own reservations, or they may not really respond to people. But most people today, in today's life, I think, they would be really keen to listen to you. And of course, if it's sometimes in some of the actions are targeted against an individual or institution, then we need to be careful. We need to protect ourselves as well, because that's very important. One of the things that we ask, another question when we do research on prison population, is that, different crimes and so on. When a researcher goes to interview these people, you have to also look at their protection, right? So I don't know whether you've seen this classic movie called, I forgot the name, but it was Anthony Hopkins, and that lady going to really investigate the psychological kind of behavior of the criminal. So when you are really going to really collect these data, you have to protect yourself. So that applies everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. So one more question. Thank you so much, sir. And one more question. Yeah. How can we start and proceed with the research on ancient sciences? Because ancient sciences do not have facts proved, which are there in the present publications, but we have evidences from our real life.
Yeah.
So how can we start a research?
Yeah. The thing is that, there is always a start point, and that start point is your reflection, the statement that you've just made, or the observation that, that there's quite a lot of work that's been done in the past, but then there is a century of complete, kind of standstill, that we don't know anything about it. So I want to do research on that. Of course, so it starts with the literature, and that should lead to a question. And again, here, one point that I would like to really highlight is that research that you're trying to really, or that work that you're trying to resume, or that research that you want to conduct, you want to build on, should have, its own contribution to the society. So that means, we want to really make sure that, whatever you're proposing will benefit the society, right? It's not that, so sometimes some of the things like, for instance, mummies in Egypt, right? So people are doing lots of archaeological research on mummies, and they are trying to find new information. So in fact, some of these were really surprising by looking at the height and weight of, the height and body composition of the mummies. They have, we have advanced our knowledge of science, right? We have really made significant advancement by looking at those ancient, observations and data and so on. So even cancer treatment. So the cancer, different types of cancer existed in those, before century, before Christ, the BC time period. And these are really fascinating. These are absolutely fascinating. So that's why research in itself is so fascinating, and, and to do that. So it's all, it's definitely possible.
So why this question came is, you told about literature survey. If there aren't evidences from the literature survey, and we can we take it from our real life and say that it happens, so that,
you can,
as an evidence, is it possible?
Yeah, you can, but you will always, this is something that everyone thinks, but you will always find some pieces of evidence lying out there, right? That it might not have come to your attention, but there is something that is deep there in the jungle. So, and so the other question that I would like to ask you is that, what prompted you to think in that way? So for instance, so you're thinking about that particular research because you think that, something has existed in the past, right? So there's always a base to start with. But having said that, sometimes, innovations, that's why innovations and new ideas can come. So new ideas can come, and you may not find any relevant literature. There, you are not just taking a risk, but you are really trying to find an inquisitive journey or a scientific processes to really establish what is in your mind, the hypothesis, right? So in there, yes, you may succeed or you may fail. So if you succeed, then that becomes a new evidence. So everyone would say, wow, well done. You've done a great job. But if you fail, that's also an outcome of a research, right? A research doesn't need to be, so this is something that I think Dr. Rajakrishnan sir, who is here, he will completely agree. So everyone who is doing statistics, most of you do statistics, I believe, even engineering and medicine, and it's wide ranging. Statistics is again very prominent. So people always have a tendency to look for significance. So I want to really look at p-values. I want to really find, what is this, and is this relationship significant? I think perhaps the much more fascinating output of that research could be when you don't find significance. Repeat the statistical experiments and you don't find any association. That is the finding. That, I would say, is probably much more appealing than saying that, well, oh, look, there is a relationship. So if there is no relationship, that is also an outcome of your research.
So can we write journals, do a publication based on the failed attempts? Is it possible?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Oh.
It may not be easy to get published, because sometimes, why? Because the larger community thinks that everything is based on what you've. So that's why sometimes experiments fail. And so you learn more from that failed experiment than when you have a successful experiment. Did you get it? So, for example, our former president, who is no more, APJ Abdul Kalam, always is to sort of say that, well, you learn more from failures than from success, because then that will also enlighten the scientific community, enlighten the public, because they will say, no, we know about that. Actually, Ria Moore in 2020, she published a research which established that that it's not going to work. So that is a significant contribution.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Keep asking these questions. That's really useful.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. You're mostly welcome.
Thank you, Ria. Atira?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. Good evening to all. Sir, first of all, congratulations for the wonderful expert talk, sir. Sir, I would like to ask you that how can the researcher keep the confidentiality of the collected data from the participants?
Yeah, thank you, Adra. In fact, confidentiality is, it rests upon you, right? So, because when you collect data, you are responsible to ensure the confidentiality and anonymity of that data. So there are many ways to secure confidentiality. Is A, by deleting all personal information of that person. And sometimes, that's why when you do data analysis, well, these days, data is a new oil, right? So you have to do, data, we live on data. So everything, even COVID, the whole entire COVID is based on data, right? So you have to anonymize that information. I think that's the only way to do it. But sometimes you may want to really do some follow-up studies. So, for example, in psychological research or psychiatric work or even demographic work, we want to really understand the changes in behaviors of population. So we want to really find out the same individual. So in those cases, you would really have two types of data for your analysis. One is actually a completely anonymized data. The other one is actually a data set that would really include all the the personal details like the name, the gender, their address, and so on. But you would really keep that encrypted in a password protected computer, or you would really keep it, or you can put it in a bank locker. So because it's very important, it's very, very important, because you don't want to miss that. So some of you may have collected data from local communities. Please make sure that that data is anonymized or randomized somehow, because if, let's say, so there have been instances in the UK that the UK government minister, while traveling a train, he forgot to really take his suitcase, so that which contained lots of information, So sometimes these can have significant implications on human life and civilization. So we need to be careful.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Atra.
Thank you, Atira. Sabu sir, I think Raju Krishnan sir is also having some questions. Raju sir,
I see Dr. Karthik Mohan here as well. So
sir, all your mentees are here. Karthik, Dr. Jyoti, Deepti, all are here.
I feel like it's a reunion for all of us.
And your best friend, Dr. Jekaran, is also here. Dr. Uma Jyoti is there.
What I mean, this is like a
reunion.
During COVID. Thank you, Dr. Sithara, for making this happen.
Yeah, Rajakrishnan sir.
Okay, I have a question. Two questions. One is, can you elaborate on the components that come within the purview of plagiarism? The line that separates genuine information and plagiarism. That's because the students would be interested in that.
Right. Thank you, sir, for that question. Absolutely. So the plagiarism is something that well, some of these are conscious, some are unconscious. So either consciously or unconsciously we commit plagiarism in our life, and that's because because we want to follow certain things and so on. But extracting information from published work, extracting information from different web pages and so on, this we need to treat it very seriously, because that means, like, for example, you're just let's say that somebody has, so some of these are very difficult, like, for example, certain terminologies, certain ways in which you express research are the same elsewhere, right? So for instance, if I'm saying that, if I'm trying to find the relationship between, let's say, sun and moon, and I'm saying that, well, there is actually, in cosmology, there is actually a causal relationship between the position of sun and moon. Now, in cosmology, is this really, something that we can't change? A relationship between sun and moon we can't change. So there are certain things that we won't be able to change. But what we should really do is more of a reflective approach. Like, for instance, that's why you read a passage, and then, or you read a statement, you read the findings of what others have done, and come up with your own interpretation. So that's a very tedious task, because for instance, you'd be surprised that in my coursework, what I do is that I give my students, I don't really I don't ask students to write essays. I ask students to write, the kind of solution to a problem in no more than 500 words. Why 500 words? It's easy for me to mark, of course, but I think why that, and it is very, very hard actually to really write everything in 500 words than in 2000 words, or so the people have a tendency to write forever. And in that writing process, we also extract information. So I would say, in terms of originality, we also have a tendency, let's say, for instance, some of the historical work, some of the, like history research and so on, you have quotes, right? You probably, people use lots of quotes. There are research sometimes start with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, or from Nelson Mandela, or from Albert Einstein, and so on. So I would say that, well, where possible, in scientific research, just don't use any quotes. I mean, this is something that I would really, unless it is essential. So sometimes, it's very difficult to avoid a quote, because a quote has relevance to your work. So there, you can actually do. But otherwise, please don't use that one. And also sometimes you have, let's say, for example, some data that you're using for your research. That data could be used by 10 other people. And here, what we are trying our best is actually, we know the work of those 10 other people. But sometimes there could be 11th person who has done some research, published this paper, and we don't know about it. And we are probably using the same data. But one thing that I can confirm is that even if you give the same research problem with the same methodology, whatever, to 10 different people, the 10 different people will come up with their own, if you ask them to be original. So research is about originality and significance and rigor. So if you follow all these three, then you would find that the 10 outputs are going to be different. But sometimes there will be some overlap. So some overlaps are unavoidable, but what we should do is to reduce that kind of bias and overlap as possible, as much as possible. But academic integrity, my dear students, I think it's very, very important. And please do not, I think, it's also an integrity question, right? So you're questioning yourself at the end. So you have to be, what you should be doing is that you should be proud of what you've done. So it's all about originality. So I don't know, well, some of you have done PhD, or some of you are probably planning to do a PhD. A PhD is a PhD research, for example, or any other research. I would say the three important aspects is, one is actually it is contributing to the advancement of knowledge. So in that process, what you want to ensure is originality and the significance and the academic rigor. When I talk about academic rigor, all the ethics, the ethics that we are talking about, that comes into picture. I hope I answered that, and it is helpful also to students, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sabu. Nice meeting you over this meeting, Zoom meeting.
Yeah, always, great pleasure. Yeah. So unless there are other questions, I'm happy to really give you some kind of case studies. And shall we just have a quick run through some of the case studies? Shall we do that?
Yeah, sure, sir. It would be really grateful if Dr. Jikaran can speak a few words about. Yeah.
Believe me, Dr. Jikaran is going. Today he is the most proud. I think in the sense that you are the one who have. I think all this is happening because of this one individual, along with Dr. Rajakrishnan sir. I think their leadership is what's happening today.
Professor Sabu, it's such a pleasure to see you, the rich colors around you and on you. It's such a pleasure, and more happy because I still remember the day when we defined the lifelong learning lab along with Sithara. So I still remember those days, and we had planned similar in exchanges on that particular day, and I'm so happy that these things are happening. And the other day, someone was telling that geography is the geography is the new history, or something like that, because geography has become history.
Yeah,
that's what someone said. So the barriers of distance, travel, that's all gone. So it's very easy to arrange such events, and to get a person like Professor Sabu for this, I think it's a great thing. Well done, Dr. Sithara. So I don't have any questions, but then after listening to you, I keep remembering a line written on the wall of my professor's room, and I think it's very important here. I think it's like this: research is to see what everyone has seen and to think what no one has thought.
Yes.
So it's all about perspective, and I was just listening to the questions, and I believe the students are from Women's College itself, and very happy and proud that we have such students midst us who are asking very challenging questions, like the question that was asked on research involving ancient mythology and things which are not documented or validated. So we have students like that, but then we are not letting them flourish or giving them a conducive environment. So I'm sure that the lifelong learning lab and such endeavors will motivate them, and so that's what I want to say. Big thanks to Sithara for this opportunity, for letting us see Professor Sabu in flesh and blood.
I'm so, well, I think the state and the country should be proud of of you and Dr. Rajakrishnan for making many things happen. So I think when you mentioned that about the potential future of all these students, I think one of the things that we could collectively ensure is that whatever we can actually do to support you and to guide you to the right direction, I think we'd be happy to work with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So I also have I could really very openly announce that in my administrative role, and we have an India Center at the university where the aim is actually, you won't believe that we have we have also, I mean, I think there is a, I mean, I can probably introduce the India Center at the end, so that will give everyone that perspective and an opportunity for you to participate. Doesn't matter where you are. And sometimes, you know, we are also thinking of different scholarships for bright students like yourself, you know, Atira, Ria Mol, and so on. You know, I think you will have these opportunities, and I think you should really explore these opportunities. That's what I would say. So shall I just move on to the to kind of quick case?
Sure, sir, sure, please.
Okay, right. So let me see how, I think I need to. Yeah. So I hope the slide is visible.
Yes, sir.
Here is one research. This is actually, I want you all to really work with me on this. So let me see that, well, how you are going to really contribute to that. I think I need to really manage the screen and the interactions. So I have a so, you know, let's say that, well, our Honorable Health Minister, who's such a dear person, I mean, to not just to Kerala, I think she's proved, you know, as an able woman leader you know, in responding to this pandemic. Let's say that she's commissioning a new research on COVID-19 surveillance research in Vadikad, right? That's near the, so I know that students are from other districts as well, from Alappuzha and a few other places, but you may not know. But let's say that, well, this is one of the places which is really quite central in Trivandrum. So we are actually conducting COVID-19 surveillance research in the area. What are the from the ethical point of view, what do you foresee? So in other words, let me clarify. By surveillance means like you are collecting data and you're monitoring the trends of COVID-19 outbreak in the region. Okay, so let me ask students, I mean, who wanted to really come and you know, share their experiences. Who wants to join?
Sir, could you repeat the question once again? I didn't get that.
Okay. So the question is that the government has commissioned a new research project on COVID-19 surveillance research in the Vadikad area. Okay. So you are the researcher, and you are invited to design the research. You want to really, so anything. So from that whole process, let's say that the government has asked you to do this. So from the research ethics point of view, what are the things that you would really take care of, as well as what are the challenges that you foresee in conducting this type of research from an ethical point of view?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Abhirami.
Yeah, so like to begin with, so it's mainly dealing with people, right? So first of all, we will be wanting the statistical data of the people residing in that area. Like we'll have to collect that.
Yeah.
And
okay.
It's being, even by WHO, it's being said that even though it doesn't, like we can't say that it won't affect the youth people who are in this particular age group, but mostly it is dangerous to the old age people and small kids. So we must have a proper data. Yeah, that must be the first step, I guess. Like if I am assigned with that job, then I'll be doing that.
Okay.
The statistical data.
Good start, Abhirami. So you have to do all the testing, right? You have to really,
yes.
you have to oversee, and you have to oversee a team of people who are going to test, who are going to do the COVID-19 testing. And let's assume that you get the results in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you're going around Vadikad houses, different houses. There are lots of houses around, you know, the nearing area, sort of Vilambalam, Shastamangalam, Pulimud, and whatever, Pujapura. And, you know, let's assume that Vadikad area. So you're really going to collect data. What are the things that you would really bear in mind from an ethical point of view?
Okay. Like, sir, with regard to the, like, sir, is it about the people? Like, I have to collect the data about the people.
Yeah. So I should have really made that clear. So you have a medical team with you, right? So you have a medical, probably let's say that a couple of nurses with you to collect sample. let's say saliva or swab test or whatever test, right? So you want to do that. So how would you approach this?
Okay. So I haven't thought about
So,
this before, so I might be needing some time. Yeah.
No,
can I?
yeah. Yes, who is that?
Okay. This is Riam also.
Ria. Oh, please, Ria. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a team with me. They have all the equipments for the test to be done.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make sure that enough, number of kits are there for the test. We'll make, sure that proper disposal of these kits are also possible, because this is a pandemic. It can, it can get transferred from one person to another if we are not, careful with the test kits.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I think, you have picked up an important point regarding safety, right? Your own safety, also safety of others.
We'll be having enough number of masks, and first I'll ensure the safety of the people with me. They should have the face shields and enough gloves.
Yeah. Oh, we lost you there for a second, but absolutely, yeah. Right. So I think I'm going to pick on that. Yes. So safety is very, very important. So you need to really include that in the the protocol. And let's assume that, well, let's imagine that you are in front of household, right? So I mean, you have to really ensure that, well, you have to give so you have to request the household to complete a consent form, right? And providing enough details and so on, because you need to provide the full details of the project, right? So why you are collecting this data, right? You're collecting this data. Well, of course, for this one, people know that, well, why we are collecting the data. Let's assume that, well, you're in front of the household and let's assume that you've collected the data, right? You have tested the data, and in 5 minutes, you got results that 2 people in the household are positive. COVID positive.
Okay.
So what would you do?
Sir.
Sure. Who's this?
Sir, I'm Adira.
Right. Sure. Adira. Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, by following the COVID protocol, I will first collect the consent from the participant, and then I will explain about the study, and I will explain the questions one by one, sir. Very shortly, by considering their values, norms, and all.
Yeah. So, so here, your role is as a researcher. So you have found that, well, these 2 people in a household, they are tested positive. So what would you do?
Sir, I will definitely follow the COVID protocol. I will wear the protection and all, and I will definitely give awareness to them. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So absolutely, but I'm asking this question for you to think a bit more. I mean, I haven't really thought enough on this because I just came up with this idea this morning. But I was thinking that, well, one of the things that you could think of is that, well, when your team has confirmed that 2 people in that household are tested positive, the question is that, are you going to tell them, saying that, look, you both are positive?
So I think one of the important okay. Adira, continue.
No, Abhirami, please continue. No, please.
Okay, no, sir. Like, if 2 people are tested positive, so first we must be like, so that's what I think. We must be able to tell whether they are having the proper symptoms and all, right? If they are having severe symptoms and all, they must be hospitalized. And if they are not having this, then they can be in quarantine in house itself, and with proper precautions, we can. Yeah, that's what I think, sir.
And we can also. Yes, sir. Sir, and
Please.
We can also tell them to not get panic, sir. So we can also convey the COVID safety measures to them.
So, this is, I mean, I'm glad that I put this example. So as a researcher, we are not supposed to do any of these things. We should not be we should not be disclosing the result to the people. I know that, well, ethically, for instance, I mean, some people are still scared about COVID, right? So let's say that, Abhirami, you have disclosed this result to, let's say, the an Amuma there, right? And say that, well, Amuma, you have COVID, right? And the moment Amuma is just falling down, and she is really, she's probably dying of panic, not because of COVID. Seeing that, well, a researcher or some group of people who have come and they always think that it is health people, people from the health department. But here we are not. Well, even if we are, here our aim is not to really disclose the result, but we have an obligation, right? So the same example, I really use that in the context of Africa. I think Dr. Raju Krishnan knows this in detail. So there is something called Demographic and Health Survey that is conducted in over 90 countries since 1980s. It's a huge survey. So in Africa and many other parts, also in India, we collect data on HIV/AIDS in the past, right? So in 10 years ago, we used to collect lots of data on HIV. So the test kits are brought to the household. Then you do the testing, and then the testing result. We know that, well, because you are in the kind of community where you're collecting the data, and you know that this person from that household is HIV positive. So are you going to tell them that you are HIV positive and walk away saying that, thank you for the test, you are positive, good luck? And can you leave like that? No, you can't. So there, what the protocol that they adopt is that they give. So they say that, well, look, I think it seems that there are possibly indications, and then, you would really refer them, or you would either make a referral at that point, or you say that, well, look, you need further testing, further confirmation, and so on. So there, unless you're forced to disclose the result, again, that's a very, very difficult circumstance. But here, as a researcher, our aim is not to really disclose any of this information because it's sensitive. It can affect, it can harm that individual, right? That person. So the moment that you leave the household, the person can go and commit suicide, right? That's possible because some people are really scared about COVID, and some people are really, and that has happened in the past. Even, we have seen people jumping out of the hospitals and dying because they are, and that is, so society is very complex. So we have to manage this. And that management, that research management, is exactly what we are talking about, the whole research ethics and so on. So here, the protocol is that you would really tell the people that, look, the health department will be in contact with you very soon, or you also inform, you have an obligation, because here I go back to what I think Reggie Moll asked, Rena Moll asked first, that question regarding that accountability. So here, it is your responsibility to tell the health authority who have commissioned this survey to mention that, well, look, this household has this information, because that's actually a department that will take care of this information, because as individuals, we are not really responsible, or we should not be liable for that household. Is that clear, or do you need further clarity in that one?
Clear, sir.
Who wants to challenge me?
Sir, I'm not challenging,
Yeah.
but I was just, I left the meeting while I was answering that. I was telling that we can tell the household people to be, even if we get the result today, we can say, okay, the result might come tomorrow. So till then, please, obey the protocols, have social distancing even at home if possible, and ask them to take precautionary measures, and then we can tell the data to the health department, and then they can take care of these people, because in one day itself they can infect other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very good point, Riyamor. Absolutely. So you can actually also adopt that strategy. But so you can actually, but here again, the question is that, well, of course, if there are kind of leaflets that you want to share from the government, that you can actually tell them that, well, look, you have to follow this one. But knowing that someone is already positive, you would need to also make sure that, well, you have an obligation, right, to the society as well, to make sure that this doesn't really transmit elsewhere and so on. But it's all about disclosure. We talked about disclosure of certain, we call it statistical or data disclosure. We need to be very, very careful, because here we are dealing with the sensitive information. I think that's one of the message that I want to really convey, and I hope it's clear enough. Let me quickly move on to another interesting example. This is actually adolescent sexual and reproductive health in Africa. So we have done lots of research on that. So based on that, I'd like to really give some experiences and so on. So let's assume that, well, the objective of this this research is to understand the sexual behaviors of young people or adolescents in the in Africa, or it could be even in India, wherever it is. So let's say that, well, it's Africa. What are the things that comes to your mind? I mean, when you deal with this such a topic? Anyone?
So it's just the thought, so it's being, yeah. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking, they must be, first of all, they must be made aware, right, about this particular concept. Like in India and all, it's being said that sexual education has to be made mandatory from, a particular age, so that they'll become aware. First of all, they must be aware about this, and they must know the importance. Then only they'll be able to accept the thing and all. That's what I think, sir.
Yeah. So one thing that you picked up is the age, right? So define the age of the. So in other words, defining your target population is very important. So who is your target population? The target population is adolescents, and the adolescents could rate the standard definition of the World Health Organization defining an adolescent is actually from age 12 onwards. Now, age 12. Then age 12 to 15, there is early adolescence, and then there is late adolescence from 15 to 19, and so on. So there are different definitions. But the question is that here you're trying to collect data from a household or from a school or from a college, whatever. So, and you're asking these very sensitive questions. Now, the first question that comes to your, that should come to your mind is actually the age, the importance of age. So technically, or legally, can you really ask these questions about sexual experiences to very young people, minor age people? So the answer is no.
So,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, please.
So what came to my mind is we can take a survey. In that we can, print the questions and ask them to answer, and then later take all these and then have an evaluation of the answers. So we'll be able to know, making sure that your information will be, private and it won't go public.
Yeah,
assuring them.
So that's one aspect. So that is actually the method of data collection, right? The other thing is about the ethical issues. Ethical issues is about, can you really talk, either in a written format or in an oral verbal format? Can you talk about experiences to young people, underage people?
No.
So our aim is that, is to find out that there are a small subset of individuals who are engaged in some risk behaviors, who don't know anything about certain things and so on. So this has to be really dealt with very, very, very carefully, right? So you don't want to, again, young minds, we have all gone through their age, and that's a very sensitive age where the hormones tend to play quite a lot, and that can be very sensitive and so on. So sometimes it can also put people in depression to really reflect on their own cases. So for example, in Africa, in some of the places that I have worked, I have been there personally, there is no concept of age. Surveys are young people as young as 12 and 13 used to respond to surveys, and the people who are conducting surveys have no reflections whatsoever on the age of the individual. So what I'm saying is that is inappropriate, because so if you're conducting this research in a household, you have to make sure that if a person is minor, that means in terms of age, then you need to ensure that there is an adult who is present in that during the time of interview, and that adult could be a father or a mother or an elder sister who is really aged 18 years and above. So here in the UK, nobody is allowed to really collect any data on these things before age 16. But once you can, without formal consent, so you have to have the informal consent. That's one thing. Second, you have different ways of collecting data. That's what you mentioned, like giving them a questionnaire rather than asking these questions and so on. So you see this in this particular example, what I want to really illustrate is the sensitivity associated with age and also the implications. So sometimes, for example, and also you have also a responsibility from a researcher point of view, because when you ask these questions, even if, even in a private conversation that you're talking about these things, you could potentially, so the child is saying that, well, look, I was sexually abused or sexually exploited. And so in those circumstances, the question is that, well, are you going to really report that to the mother or to the police and so on? So these are really very intricate, very complex challenges that we confront conducting these type of research. So I hope that's clear. So now I'll really move on to, I'll take you from Africa to the Middle East. So this is actually in Dubai. So I have this is also from reflecting on my own research done in the Middle East for a good period of time. So one of the things that if you look at, for example, the 3 countries that contribute globally to the burden of road traffic accidents in terms of deaths and disabilities, in terms of the years of life lost due to deaths and disability, 3 countries feature on the top of the list, and they are, one is Saudi Arabia, second is Oman, and third one is UAE, which also includes Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. And you'll be surprised that I think in my own research working with them, to establish what is known as a social research observatory for the government in Oman, what really shocked me was actually the victims, the vast majority of these victims are from the Indian subcontinent. And even when you look at it more carefully, the data, you'll be surprised that the vast majority are from Kerala. So these are people, our own people who are from Kerala losing their lives on roads in these countries. And road traffic accidents are really horrible in the Middle East. And of course, I mean, that research in itself would need probably another 2 hours to really go through the research. But the point here is that about when you conduct this research, so let's say that, well, I don't want to really waste lots of your time, but I just want to really quickly highlight 2 or 3 key important points. One is that the research of this nature could have implications, wider implications for the industry, for the government, for the insurance companies. So because, there are whatever information that you're collecting. So one of my PhD students, she is actually an Omani. So she conducted research on this. So she conducted a detailed forensic analysis of different types of accidents. So when I say forensic, not really examining the bodies and so on, but actually in detail, like the intensity of the crash, and who were there in the car, were they alone, were they, what was the other car doing there, and and the type of accident and so on, and alongside all details, including the names and the other license details of the passengers. Here I have highlighted the nameplate, the number plate of the car, and that information. So that information that you're collecting are very, very sensitive. So because, sensitive in the sense that these are some of the data that you need to be preserving, you need to ensure confidentiality in data storage, because you don't want these data to be available in public. Now, this is actually a photograph that I've really extracted from one of the newspapers in the Middle East. Therefore, they have really shown. So usually what you do is that, well, in these circumstances, you would blur the image of that number plate and so on. Now, the other thing is that regarding follow-up studies of accidents, that people who have lost their life, and you're interviewing family members of people who have lost their life and so on. So these are all extremely complicated and sensitive research that we talk about. Okay, so just moving on. There is another research which I was actually, when I was the chair of the Ethics Research Governance Committee at the university. This is one of the research that from the Department of Sociology and Medicine. I think they had interdisciplinary research tend to take place. So why medicine is because I think they were a group of psychologists, psychiatrists who are based there. They were really doing this research to understand young people's co-residence and social behavior in an open environment. So the research proposal was to put a camera a video camera in their living room. So these are young people. Some are, most of them are single, or I think it's single, if I remember correctly. And the objective here is to really find their behaviors, their social behaviors within a living room, or a kind of because if you share a house, let's say with 5 other people, then you have common area where you. So it's actually to understand the behavior, social behaviors in common area. So the proposal was actually to install a video camera which is operative from evening 6 until I think 11 o'clock in the evening. So 6 to 11. So that's the time period they wanted to observe. So this was actually the purpose of the research. And we had a panel to examine this particular application. So before I get on to to giving you the details, any reflections from your side? Do you think that is this research ethically justified? Is this research appropriate?
So we are, getting into the private space of the people. Privacy matters.
Mm-hmm.
So fitting a camera in the living room, I don't think it's that apt until we have the consent of the inmates.
Yeah. So all people. So Ria, I'm going to really give you the answer. Everyone, let's say that they have consented to this, just to installing the camera.
Okay.
Right.
Then.
So that becomes challenging, right?
Yeah, it is challenging because at times people can just forget about the fact the camera is there.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in front of the public, when someone is watching us, we do things well. And when someone is not there, we don't do it. They can forget. Sometimes it can be, a very sensitive issue.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah. So there are, and these are young people. Young people means like, these are people who are in the university or colleges and so on. And, the context is that, there could be only boys, there could be girls, there could be boys and girls together, and so on. Many things could happen, right? From that in that time space, from evening interactions, from cooking to really having food to anything. So even there could be intimate private moments that could be capturing on the video. So the people who are responding, people who, although they have understood the purposes of this research, and also although they sort of understand that anonymity, etc., is there, is all being videographed, right? It's videotaped. So that is actually a much more sensitive and very, very challenging research design. So at the end, I'll just give you the verdict of our panel was actually that we recommended that that video should not be used to capture the behavior, because instead what we said was that we didn't want to really give them any research advice, but the panel recommended that probably there could be someone so among the sort of that group who is sharing the living space, they could also create some kind of diaries, like for instance, at what time people really, people start cooking, did they eat together, did they play together, did they watch television together, were they on social media, were some people working, and so on. So, so these are, these are just to really give you a quick glance of some of the real challenges in conducting research. So before I conclude this little presentation, let me give you a catastrophic impact of an article published in a top medical journal called Lancet. And this was actually a research conducted by one of the very prominent medical scientists and who established that there is a causal link, there is an association, or there is a statistical association, or even a causal link between autism in children and MMR vaccine. MMR stands for mumps, rubella, and measles. So these are that's the vaccine. And so what happened was, this was actually a research published almost 2 decades ago, and this came from a leading scientist and his team. And the initial reaction was that there was a period of time, because the link was clearly established that the MMR vaccine, so those children who had MMR vaccine, they're more prone to developing colitis and autistic syndromic behaviors and so on. So what happened was that a cohort of children, or the cohort of mothers decided not to vaccinate their children for measles. About 14 years later or 13 years later, I think something like that, there was a measles outbreak in the country. And there several children were really going through the measles issue. So this was actually a very interesting thing, because eventually what came out was that the Lancet is actually a journal which is really one of the well-respected and top journals in the field of medicine. So probably the research team was really trying to get a paper published there. So in other words, this person called Andrew Wakefield and colleagues, there was evidence that was established that they manipulated the data. And because this was actually retracted. The journal retracted the publication, during the course of that legal battle, because I think somebody really did other experiments and found no relations. But it's not just about finding relations or finding no relations, as I mentioned before. But this was actually, they were asked to submit all the data that they have collected, all the clinical data that they have collected before. And what was interesting is that data, while re-examining that data, it was made very clear that they fabricated that data. So between July 2007 and May 2010, this was a couple of years later, the UK General Medical Council convened a tribunal to really discuss this issue. And there was clear evidence of scientific misconduct and against the Wakefield and their team. And although they denied all the charges, in 2010, and citing that he had failed in his duties as a responsible consultant and acted against the interests of his patients and dishonestly and irresponsibly engaged in his controversial research. So that was the end of this end of career of this researcher, and social reputation, financial reputation, because they earned a lot of money as well, I think, through lots of research funding and so on. There were lots of legal implications with this research. So I just wanted to really stop at this point to give you, when we started with the president of Hungary committing plagiarism of PhD and being eventually forced to resign from his ministry, from there to really the other side of how research not conducted in a proper ethical kind of form. So here, obviously, the case was actually they just completely ignored some of the ethical protocols. In fact, they didn't even, I think there was a point that they didn't even want to share the data or something. I don't probably remember the whole thing, but it was very clear that this particular research, was really retracted because of the gross misconduct. And it doesn't really end there, because it also had impact on children, right? Children later on, that several mothers decided, or a cohort of mothers decided not to vaccinate their children and so on. So I think that's just to really show that, well, to conclude that research ethics is something that is very, very important. And I repeat one more thing, that it right from the conception, from the design to dissemination, you need to really reflect on these research ethics very, very carefully. And whether it is human beings, animals, birds, plants, machines, engineering materials, whatever it is, I think at the end we want to really find out the impact of this. There's also a lot of research that was conducted probably in the last 20 years regarding the radiation from using mobile devices, right? So that's not been really fully validated yet. But now, we are really advancing in terms of technology. So as we advance in terms of technology, and as we have more social data, more social media data, the research ethics is going to be far more prominent than ever before. I think I'll stop here, and thank you all for listening. But I'm happy to spend a couple of more minutes to answer any questions. Thank you. Any questions?
Sir, I think we have exceeded the time. You asked
Oh,
me for
really? Oh, right,
30
right, right.
minutes and now it's around 2 hours.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So thank
So
you
so
so
we
much.
can stop here. So I
Yeah.
would like to just, I think I have have some few slides to show the university thing, but I think I can skip that, or just I think I'll just probably quickly go
Yes,
through
sure,
that.
sir.
The university's mission is changing the world for better. So we have, this is actually one of the reasons, one of the institutions, Russell Group universities. We are ranked globally number 90 in the world. So it's a top 100 universities in the world. And this is a university where you have really stalwarts like the person who invented World Wide Web to optical fiber technology. Now we are able to really talk, etc. They are the contributors. Sorry, they work. They are my colleagues here. And the impact of our research really is on government policy, on society, on business, and far more important is on teaching. So, for example, whatever I do, whatever research I do, I also teach that to students. And on teaching, it's all research-informed education, making sure that students have that critical thinking, reflective learning, etc. So I don't want to go through all of this. This is just a statistics. I think we are a group. We are the founding member of the Russell Group Institution and Worldwide Universities Network. So that means like Russell Group is actually it's like a research club, like Ivy League in the United States, where you have everything is measured in terms of research intensity and impact. So if I really publish a paper in a top journal, the university is definitely going to be very happy with my publication. But what they want to see is that they wanted to see the next question they're going to ask me is that, Sabu, now tell us that, well, what difference has this made to the society? So that is very, very important. So any research that you do should really influence and inspire the society and the young people. And interdisciplinary research is really part of it. I'll just really quickly mention about India Center. This is something that you'll be surprised for the first time ever in the university. We've been really doing some work for the last 25 years on India, but never had an opportunity to really put everything in a platform. So that's something that I took a daring step to really come up with an India Center. So this is now a center which stands at the university level. So it's a university center for inclusive growth and sustainable development. And our aim is to really because history, there was a history between India and the UK. Everyone knows that Britain and India shared a very interesting history. Some are, absolutely fascinating. Some are really terrible, and all these things. But there has to be that greater awareness and promotion of history and knowledge and different, because Britain is one of the nations with significant innovations. So whether you talk from, for instance, Isaac Newton to Charles Darwin to whatever in terms of literature, everywhere I think there has been always that is in the DNA of the people, that their aspiration is always to really contribute to society. Their aspiration is always to really advance knowledge and so on, which they have, presumably they have all learned it from India, I believe. Because I think India, we had Nalanda before as one of the world university, which really, so these good practices and these opportunities we want to really bring it together. So I'm co-directing this center with another gentleman called Amajit Singh. He's the UK India Trade and Investment Advisor to the Prime Minister's office. He's also the CEO of the India Business Group. So we work together on, we are making a lot of significant things. So one of the, among other activities, on the 17th of November, I'm happy to extend that invitation to all of you. The principal scientific advisor, the scientific secretary to the Government of India, is giving us a talk on the future of science, technology, and innovation in India, and so on. So there are lots of activities. So this is the other thing that I would like to really quickly just mention is there's a Mahatma Gandhi tree in the campus. This is something that we have pursued it. This was actually done on the 5th of June, 2019. So this was the same, the World Environment Day. the Ministry of External Affairs asked the Indian High Commission that they wanted to do something on the eve of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And so the Indian High Commission made a decision that they'll plant trees. And one of the sites that they have chosen is, of course, the Indian High Commission in London. And the other tree was actually planted in our university. And so we took that lead, and this lady's Her Excellency Ruji Ghanshyam. She's the Indian High Commissioner to Britain. And this is our former Vice Chancellor. And this gentleman is the Lord Patel of Bradford, who is from the House of Lords, who works very closely with us. And she's the mayor of the city. The other reason why Gandhi lives in Southampton is because he, when he first came to England in 1889, or it was probably a long time ago, he set his foot first in Southampton. So Southampton is also the place where Titanic had its journey. I think so. This is just a few just to give you some kind of images of Southampton, and that's a Titanic which started its journey. It didn't really have a healthy journey, but at the end, I think we know that this was actually the state of art, and it remained as one of the excellent piece of human innovation and creativity. This massive ship. I mean, today, if we had the GIS, that this Titanic would have survived. I think I'll stop there. Otherwise, I'll ruin your dinners. Right. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to Abrami Ajit, one of the young scholar of our LCube, for the official vote of thanks.
Oh, thank you. We don't need to be formal here, but I really appreciate the gesture. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, all. I'm here to propose the vote of thanks on each and everyone present here. Even I don't want to make it formal. Just one thing, sir. I would like to, first of all, I would like to thank you, sir, Professor Sabu Padmadas, sir. Personally, I felt as if it was not at all a formal webinar. Like, it was a really interactive session, and you were really approachable, sir. Like, you had that smile on your face, you were very approachable, and the case studies, it was really an innovative one too. Like, we had a chance to understand what the real scenario is, and we got a chance to just unveil what is inside our mind and speak out. And thanks a lot. It's actually for the first time that we are having this kind of webinar in which we are taking a case study and studying that. So thanks a lot, sir. Then I would like to thank Dr. Raju Krishnan, sir, Dr. Jaikiran, sir, all other faculty members, our dear Sithara ma'am, research scholars, and last but not the least, all the participants, including the L3 participants, including me myself. It was a great experience, and after the session, if anyone is asking what is the outcome of this, I would definitely, even we all will unanimously say that we got an insight as to how important, or what is the importance of ethics in research and beyond. So thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And, I really wish you all very well. Please stay safe. And it has been absolutely a delight interacting with you all. And thank you also for your wonderful questions. I think which really, I said that, well, I will leave the session learning something. And I've learned a lot in terms of through your questions. Keep questioning. I think keep questioning yourself and keep questioning the, what you see around. And that's the way to really advance your knowledge and advance the society. So thank you all, and please stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to really say goodbye. And thank you, Dr. Jyoti and Dr. Raju Krishnan, Dr. Jaikiran, and Dr. Karthik, who was here. I think that was really wonderful.
And Dr. Jyoti, would you like to show your video and say hi to Sabu sir?
Actually, എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് വയ്യായിരുന്നു സാർ, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാൻ സിക്ക് ആയിട്ടിരിക്കുവായിരുന്നു. ഭയങ്കര എനിക്ക് എന്തൊരു ത്രോട്ട് ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ പോലെ, കൊറോണ അല്ലേന്ന് അവരുതേന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഈ കുറെ പേപ്പർ നോക്കാനുണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അപ്പൊ പേപ്പർ നോക്കി കംപ്ലീറ്റ് പൊടിയടിച്ചിട്ട് ഭയങ്കര ഒരു ത്രോട്ട് ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ ഒക്കെ ആയി. അങ്ങനെ എനിക്ക് ഞാൻ ഒരു മയക്കത്തിൽ കിടന്നപ്പോഴാണ് ഇങ്ങനെ മെസ്സേജ് കണ്ട് ഞാൻ എന്നാലും വിചാരിച്ചു എന്ത് എക്സ്പെൻസ് ആണെങ്കിലും ഞാൻ എങ്ങനെയെങ്കിലും കേട്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. കാരണം ഈ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ ഈ പോസ്റ്റ് ഹ്യൂമൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ പോലെയാണ് സാറിന്റെ ക്ലാസ് കേൾക്കുന്നത്. നമ്മളെല്ലാം കഴിഞ്ഞ് നോക്കുമ്പോൾ അതേ ബാക്കി കാണത്തുള്ളൂ. ഇപ്പോഴും സത്യമായിട്ടും റിസർച്ച് ഗൈഡഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ലേണിംഗ് എന്നുള്ള ആ സ്ലൈഡ് ഞാൻ ഇപ്പോഴും എടുത്ത് നോക്കാറുണ്ട് പലപ്പോഴും. റിസർച്ച് ലെഡ് റിസർച്ച് ലെഡ് റിസർച്ച് ഡ്രിവൺ ഒക്കെ ഞാൻ നോക്കാറുണ്ട് ഇപ്പോഴും. അതുകൊണ്ട് അത് അതെ അന്ന് നടത്തിയൊരിത്. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഭയങ്കര എല്ലാവരും ഫാമിലി എല്ലാവരും സുഖമായിട്ടിരിക്കുന്നോ സർ?
എല്ലാവരും സുഖമാണ്. ഐ മീൻ നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും വി ആർ ഓൾ എല്ലാ സ്ഥലത്തും സെയിം അല്ലേ നമ്മൾ ഇൻ ടേംസ് ഓഫ് കോവിഡ് യുദ്ധം.
അതെ